The following are true scary stories from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. I'll have a link in the description below. If you enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. I really appreciate the support. This last week my channel's quadrupled in size, and the views are just out of this world. There's no other words to explain it. So once again, thank you. And let's begin. Okay, this happened to me when I was about 14 years old. So back in 2004, my parents and I lived in a rather affluent area, and my high school was known for being the best in our city. During the fall semester, there were a lot of attempted abductions at other high schools near ours, but being in the area we were, none of my friends, me, or anyone's parents were really concerned. Now, I used to walk to and from school. In order to get back home, I would have to cross the street, walk around a roundabout to get onto a path in the woods, and then after a kilometer or so, walk through a gate onto a street, and finally walk down the rather steep street to my house. This leads me to my story. After school one day in early November, it was raining pretty hard and I was trying to get through the crowds as fast as possible to walk home quickly. As I'm crossing the roundabout, I see a brown car pull up to where I usually enter the woods. As I walk by the car, the passenger side's window rolls down. He yells, "Hey!" at me, and I turn around and see two men sitting in the car. I ignore him, and he yells again, "Get in the car, we can drive you home. It's raining so hard you might get sick." At this point, I'm thinking nothing of it, just some creeps trying to get my attention, so I shake my head visibly at him and enter the woods. To this day, I can't explain what happened. As I'm walking through the woods, I literally feel a push from behind me, as if someone used both hands to push me forward. I turn around and there's no one behind me, but my whole body is screaming, "Run!" I ended up sprinting through the forest, feeling completely freaked out, although no one was behind me or chasing me. I exit the woods and start running down the street. Halfway down, my umbrella breaks in half. I quickly duck down beside a large truck and am cursing as I'm trying to put it back together. Now the truck is completely making me invisible to anyone on the street. You couldn't have been able to see me if you were on the other side of the road driving in a car. So, as I'm crouched beside the truck, I see through the bottom of it there's a car driving up the street. My heart stops. The car pulls up to the exit from the woods where I just ran out of, and the two men start yelling at each other to run in. The last thing I remember hearing is one of them yelling, "She has to still be in the woods. Go, go, go!" After I see them run into the woods, I grab my broken umbrella and run as fast as humanly possible to my house. I get inside, and for over an hour, I watch the blinds as they circle around my street, stopping every so often at my house and other houses trying to see inside. To this day, I think an angel saved my life, and I can't even imagine what would have happened had something not pushed me in the woods. So to the two assholes who tried to abduct me, let's not meet. Stalking seems to be a reoccurring theme on this subreddit as of late. This has led to the hesitation, on my part, concerning the encounter that I am about to share. This happened in 2010. I was about 27 at the time. I worked in a refurbished office space that used to be a Target, a glorified cubicle farm. I had been working there about a year when I met Kyla. Kyla was cute, with a slightly athletic build, short in stature, 4'11", with blondish hair. I, on the other hand, was a strappy guy. I've since put on weight, tall and athletic, having always been into bodybuilding during my youth. Kyla was part of an incoming group of newbies at the office who were there for training. I noticed her and thought I would ask her to lunch. She agreed. She didn't say much during our lunch date in the break room. Having been shy most of my life, I could hardly blame her. Our conversation consisted of me asking her questions and her making little noises which did not correspond with anything being asked. I thought I was going nowhere with her, having surely talked her head off. As I thanked her for the lunch date, I started getting up from the table when she said, "I'm really interested in AIDS." Taken off guard by this comment, I stand there perplexed as she gets up and leaves. Months pass and life goes on. Training classes come and go. I was working for the government at the time, and our office space trained people from all over the state, so it was not uncommon to see people from those training classes integrated into our work units. Most were often hired from elsewhere, but came to us for training.
I had a routine every afternoon, wherein I would walk to the break room and get some tea. As I was making my way back to my cube one day, a supervisor from another unit, Teresa, stops me, pulling me into a cubicle. "Hey, who is that person that keeps following you?" Confused, I ask the obvious, "What are you talking about?" She replies, "Every day when you're walking to the break room, there is a girl walking a few paces behind you. Is she a friend?" I told Teresa that I wasn't aware of anyone walking behind me, and priding myself in having a good sense of awareness about my surroundings, just thought they were messing with me. Teresa continued, "She is short, blonde, light-complected." I couldn't match the description to anyone who worked in my direct or surrounding units. I prodded her for more information. "How long has this been going on?" "A while now. We call her your little dog because she is always following you around." I was really confused, and before I could say anything else, I just found myself walking back to my cubicle. I began to look around me every time I go to get my tea. When I would walk back, I would make eye contact with Teresa to see if she could identify this mythical person. Teresa would only return my confused looks, as whatever activity she had witnessed was no longer taking place. I didn't know what to think. I was convinced somebody was fucking with me. Not shortly after that, things began to come up missing from my desk. Pens, notepads, etc. Since it was an open environment, I figured people were just being liberal with my things. It was not until I began coming up in the mornings where I would find my phone cord wrapped around my computer monitor with my phone off the hook, notes telling me how nice I looked the previous day, and random annoyances which ran the gamut from mildly annoying to creepy. I kept a detailed record of these things, just in case. This went on for about a week. On some random day, I received an email from somebody who I didn't recognize but was in our office global. The title of the email said, "Interesting developments about HIV and AIDS vaccine." I opened the email and there was a link to a story about HIV and AIDS research. It was signed by Kyla. My first thought was that I wasn't aware she was even in our office, as it had been almost a year since we had last spoke, and I would have been aware of a new hire. I am sure I must have missed something. Then I began to receive email after email, some about HIV and AIDS, and others about how she can't stop thinking about me and our date. I replied to one of these emails politely and told her that it was nice to hear from her because I didn't know what happened to her after training. This clearly encouraged her. One day, as I was going to the bathroom, I felt someone pull me into one of the training rooms which were adjacent to the men's room. The pull on my arm was violent and intense. I had done some sparring with my father, who was a judoka, and I recognized a good tug when I felt one. The room was dark, and I could barely see the outline of a female now in front of me. She began to laugh hysterically, pushing me hard against the wall, the back of my head connecting with force. With a sudden intensity, she placed her hands on my belt and began to try and undo it, all the while telling me she wanted to share something special with me. I was frozen in fear. I wondered if I was being raped. I couldn't hit her. This was a woman, and every attempt to push her off of me just increased her eagerness to continue. I desperately reached for a light switch, and to my surprise and utter dismay, it's Kyla, staring at me wide-eyed with the utmost intensity. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that she couldn't stop thinking about our date. Thinking how wildly inappropriate this would all seem had someone walk in, I pull up my pants, compose myself, and begin to head out to the door to the training room. This is when she begins commanding that I look at her, in a tone that felt both alien and uncharacteristic given my previous interaction with her. I feel a hard shove from my back, moving me forward, catching myself halfway to the ground. She starts laughing and just walks away. By this time I am so utterly fucking confused. I go into the men's room and try and compose myself. Had she been the person Teresa said was following me? What just happened? As absurd as it may sound, I really fear I was going to be raped? This, unfortunately, is not the end, and it gets much, much worse. I didn't report her right away, because I didn't know how to go about reporting a case of male sexual harassment. In hindsight, I should have done this sooner rather than later, as the events which followed caused some irreparable damage to my reputation with this employer. After my previous altercation with Kyla, things escalated. She had been reassigned to a unit which sat a row of cubicles behind me. I could feel her gaze burning the back of my head on a daily basis, and given the past I regretfully now shared with her, it made me quite uncomfortable. At this employer, we had a corporate instant messaging service which was meant to be used to contact someone on our network if we had any questions concerning something we were working on. It is here that I started to receive messages from her, which was smart on her part, as the only way I could save them was from taking a screenshot, unlike the emails. She began taunting me for not having taken her in the training room, and telling me I wasn't much of a man. I tried my best to ignore these. I didn't know how to go about reporting this to upper management, but I knew I had to, somehow. We often worked ridiculously late hours at this job, and by the time it was time to leave, it would be dark outside. The parking lot lights were in dire need of repair, so there was sporadic visibility. No problem. I would often walk people to their cars to make sure they got there safely without incident. On some occasions, Kyla would park next to my car, once she found out what make and model I had, and would be there, waiting. At this time, rumors came back to me that her and I were seeing each other. Due to workplace rules, this was something I was never willing to undertake, especially in light of our previous situation. Nevertheless, some of the women with who she began to associate with pinged me messages during work, asking me if certain things about our relationship were true. Things like whether or not we were really seeing each other, and if it was true that I had been intimate with her in the training room. I denied any and all of the claims, but the nature of the gossip in this place was working against me. I decided to stay as low as I possibly could, which was difficult given my position there, and I decided to tell Kyla that enough was enough. I asked via email if she could meet me in the break room, public enough, because we needed to talk. She agreed enthusiastically. When we met, I asked her to stop doing these things, that we were co-workers, and that nothing could become of it. I realized that I had begun everything by asking her to lunch that day long ago, but felt that this had gone beyond that lunch date, which led to nothing. She stayed quiet for the entirety of our conversation, and once finished, she asked me if I was done. She then looks at me, wounded, and says my name in a melodic way that still disturbs me to this day. She asked me how I could have done this to her, and she storms off. Thinking that things would settle down from here on out, I decided I had done the right thing. She then stops coming into work. This lasted a good week or so, and I said nothing of the matter. Not my suspicions, not anything, and just played it cool. Random people would come to my cubicle and ask if I had seen her, heard from her. I would always deny that we knew each other outside of work. Then the rumors began to surface that maybe I had done something to her, and that she had to seek medical help. I went into full-on panic mode at this point. I didn't know what I had to do, but I had to do something. That rumor had been passed to me by someone in low management who was privy to some inner office banner, asking of me if it was true. I absolutely denied it and began to get every email and screenshot that I could. This happened to me on Friday. The following Monday, Kyla showed back up to work dressed to the nines, heels, skirt, her hair straightened. This girl was beautiful, I will give her that much. The entire day she played it up and was the center of attention. It was unavoidable. She would pass by my cubicle and smile every so often, and would also flirt with some of my coworkers, making eye contact with me the entire time. That day I went out to lunch by myself and drove back to work. Once in the parking lot, immediately after parking and the automatic locks unlocked, my passenger door swung asunder and Kyla throws herself into my vehicle. I ask her what she is doing there, and I begin to pull the key out of the ignition when she reaches over and pulls my right hand by the wrist. Again, taken by surprise, it takes me a few seconds to realize what is happening. In shock, I feel her pulling my arm again, my shoulder aching at this point, as she pulls up her skirt with her free hand and tries to force my hand into her underwear. She begins to moan excitedly and tells me that she has something for me, and begins to scratch my forearm the minute I pull away, missing but comes close. I don't know what it was, but the words AIDS, open wound, and blood flashed before my eyes as I heard her laughing once more as she had done before. "Are you fucking crazy?" I had lost it at this point. "If you don't fuck me in your car right here and now," she tells me authoritatively, "I'm going to tell everyone that you raped me." I was in utter disbelief. What the fuck Twilight Zone had I walked into? I told her to get out of my car as I did so myself. She complies, not before burying her heel into my upholstery and slamming the door with tremendous force. As she did so, she took her heels off and ran back into the building. The timing could not have been worse, as several of my coworkers were just coming back from lunch themselves and witnessed her leaving, faking tears, from my car. Once inside, I am confronted by upper management, who pulled me into a meeting and asked me if I assaulted Kyla. She relayed to them fake accounts of me assaulting her in her apartment and raping her several times, the most recent which had occurred a mere half hour prior to our meeting. Before security was called, I asked them if I could send them emails and chat transcripts that I had gathered. They agreed. As I made my way back to my cubicle, I wondered if I would lose my job over these false accusations. I was no doubt in the fight of my life. When I got back to my desk, just about everyone stared at me like I had done something wrong. I did not have the face to do anything other than what I had come back to do. At that moment, I received a phone call from my mom, who was in the middle of an emergency herself. As I stepped outside to take this quick call, binder of messages in hand, Kyla follows me, and before I can ask my mom what is wrong, feel her push me against the chain link fence which partitioned the parking lot. Kyla begins to say my name over and over again in that haunting melodic tone. "We need to talk. Please let me talk. We need to talk," she would say over and over. "No, please leave me alone," I pleaded with. No matter where I moved, she kept following, shouting, louder and louder for me to pay attention to her. I could not hear my mom on the other end, so I tried to make my way back inside through a side door. Once back inside, I assured my mom that as soon as I was done here, I would go get her. Heading back to the meeting room, I make my way through the center of the building, cubicles on both ends. Kyla storms into the building behind me, shouting loudly over everything and everyone behind me. "Why won't you pay attention to me? What did I do to you?" With complete abandon, I picked up the pace, and by some miracle, once I get to the meeting room door, upper management comes out to see the commotion, and it catches her in the act. She threatens to kill me and to go to the police concerning my having raped her, in front of all of our coworkers. Upper management, with security and HR, interview us separately and conclude that she's instigated everything from the get-go. The binder of messages I had kept is what sealed the deal. I handed everything over to them, complete access to everything. At the end of the day, she was terminated. Before leaving, security escort accompanying her, she began to spread rumors of how we were expecting twins, and I would be a wonderful father. That was the last I ever saw of her. As some of you have asked, how did this affect my reputation there? Well, it was never the same after Kyla. People would continue to talk about what had happened and wondered, because of my musculature and stature, whether or not any of those were true accusations. After a while, it was no longer fulfilling for me to show up to work, especially when I was viewed by a lot of my coworkers with a suspicious gaze. Nevertheless, I left that place and went to meet my wife shortly thereafter. To this day, I am left with a lot more questions than answers. What was her problem? The obsession with AIDS, and her obsession with wanting to gift me something. Was she truly that mad? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. I tried something different with my microphone. I'm sure you probably noticed it in the longer story. Leave me a comment down below and let me know how it worked out, if it was better, or if I should go back to the old way. After all, this is something I do for your entertainment. I did this a little longer episode to show a little appreciation for the extra support I've been receiving. It's been amazing, and once again, thank you guys. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this weekend with the family for the 4th of July, and everyone else in the United States celebrating Independence Day. I wish you a happy Independence Day and safe holidays. Don't drink and drive. Keep everyone safe. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.